It's your Cinebois to Cinemen, episode 83.
83.
Hope you're well, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. This week, Tornado.
Tornado.
John Maclean's follow-up to Slow West.
Yes.
What year was that?
I want to say...
I should have asked you before, but you're usually good at this.
I'm going to go 2019 and then look it up live on air. I'm fairly sure it was it was in the teens.
If you get this wrong, it's over, this whole thing.
2015.
Fucking hell, really?
Yeah. I did think of saying that, and then I was like, that's far too old. So it's like 10 years ago. That's mad. What has he been up to in 10 years? Directing adverts or something?
I don't know, actually. Maybe I should know.
No, I did look him up, and I don't think it was much else.
I think he struggled to get projects off the ground.
Oh, man, that's a shame.
Just before we we should save this for the majority of the episode, but I know that a few people in their kind of criticisms of the film have lamented what they feel is a more noticeable kind of smaller budget. Sorry, the smaller budget is more noticeable.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I can kind of see that, but it's a weird thing to criticise the film.
Yeah, I didn't really see that, to be honest.
I think it looks smart.
Yeah.
And again, we're
we're starting already. Oh.
Yeah.
So, as the film is a kind of fusion of two genres or settings or characters in certain settings that you don't ordinarily see, which is, I think, kind of John Maclean's bread and butter, really. Certainly, of course, in the case, I guess, more noticeably in Tornado. Yeah. I think it's more subtly deployed in Slow West, but I think it's definitely there. The DNA is there throughout.
Yeah, oh yeah.
We thought we'd talk about films of a similar ilk.
Okay, yeah.
So films that fuse different settings with, I guess, characters in unfamiliar settings or different genres to great effect. And what is it about that combination or that kind of fusion of things that would largely considered or previously considered to be sort of kind of incongruent makes it good or makes it work?
Yeah.
I should say.
Yeah.
So we'll have a chat about that. Of course, as well, we'll talk a little bit about samurai movies.
Okay. Yeah. A topic I'm less well versed on. So I'll be largely listening and responding as opposed to actively kind of sharing the enthusiasm purely because it's a bit of a blind spot for me. But nonetheless, looking forward to it.
It's kind of like a genre of cinema for me that I think it was, like when you first sort of discover like the Kurosawa, samurai movies, it's like that big moment. And I think that's part of the reason why I have such a love for them, and I've tried to seek out as many as I can. So I'll have a little chat about that.
Nice. Cool.
Lovely.
Questing the cinematic void.
Okay then, so films that fuse different genres.
Yes.
We sort of did a hasty Google just to sort of see what the kind of top ones were.
Yeah, because
a lot of it's the kind of stuff you'd expect, I think, to come up.
So I unfortunately and regrettably used artificial intelligence to try and compile a list. And unfortunately, I think it confused Tornado, which, by the way, we should probably say now, there's no tornadoes in the film. It's not tornado-centric.
I've had very similar conversations with colleagues and people, and that's what we got to the weekend. I went to watch Tornado, and they go, oh.
Is that a follow-up to Twisters? Or and all of the ChatGPT just got confused, and it started to list, like, tornado-centric movies towards the end, but it got it right in the beginning, so I don't know what the fuck was going on there. Shouldn't have used it. Anyway, it's an odd mix, and there's some surprising ones on there. One that we've actually discussed really recently, like From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
That was sort of in conjunction with Sinners, but it's a good example. I don't know if it's blending, because it's one genre and then it sort of makes a sort of
hasty
left
detour,
turn, to another one.
I think that's sort of a good example of how to sort of do it in a way that might be slightly different.
Yeah, okay.
Because it does set itself up as almost like a kind of heist gangster movie for like the first. How long? It's been a long time.
Like an hour.
Yeah,
and it's the third act that flips
it. Yeah. I mean, that's quite an interesting way to take it, isn't it?
Yes, and arguably slightly more interesting. Not necessarily more difficult, but more interesting than kind of hopping between genres as your film progresses. Like Shaun of the Dead, for example, is is a comedy, but it isn't. The comedy isn't derived from the zombies situation. Like, it's very much one on the other. Like, the actual predicament they're in is quite serious in that film, but it's the kind of banter between the two leads, and by extension their kind of circle of friends, which generates the comedy, and the horror, which is very real and really brutal at times. Kind of.
I remember Dylan Moran getting
yeah.
his guts eaten out in the pub.
Yeah, exactly.
That really horrified me when I watched it the first time.
Yeah, because it came out in 2004, so I was 10. So, yeah, I think, when maybe I was 11, because I think I watched it on DVD the following year, kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
But nonetheless, yeah, like confronting to see that. And you kind of watch the film not for the comedy, but for those moments that kind of gross out, like viscera, I suppose.
Yeah, I think why that sort of works so well and the way it fuses genre so well is because there's a very obvious reverence for the kind of movies that kind of form the kind of narrative backbone of Shaun of the Dead. Obviously George Romero.
Yes, yeah.
Zombie films being central to that influence. And, I think that reverence translates into a sort of warmth.
Yeah.
That makes the kind of, not only the comedy makes it a better comedy, but also a kind of, that it gives it a kind of heart.
Yeah, definitely.
The kind of Simon Pegg, Edgar Wright combination can do when they're firing all cylinders. Anyway, it felt like very much a continuation to that kind of comforting closeness that you would have had watching Spaced.
Oh yeah. You're just sort of watching a group of friends bond,
which is weird given the situation, and as you've said,
yeah.
They're very playful in that way, and it never, because a lot of genre fusion often comes from the kind of the pointing out of the tropes, so very blatantly trying to, like, particularly when comedy's involved, so a lot of like the kind of spoof movies like Hot Shots or Scary Movie, like those kinds of movies, a lot of the comedy comes from pointing the finger at the kind of tropes of the genre. And very blatantly sort of deconstructing it,
unmasking them.
And whereas this is kind of more, again, that reverence plays it more of a pivotal role. And when they are sort of arsing around a bit more with the zombies, like I always remember the bit with the swing ball.
That's right. Yeah,
the comedy that's between the characters is so well established that you buy that, and it doesn't deter from the kind of the horror elements that you sort of spoke about, because it is quite a gory movie, really.
Oh, massively. Yeah, I'm thinking of the bit at the beginning where Mary gets pushed onto the parasol thing.
Oh yeah.
Really, like, era of practical effects as well. I mean, that particular bit was sort of VFX enhanced, but it was, the foundation was there. It took the horror seriously. Like, it didn't shy away from it, like making the blood like super thick red, or having people have injuries that would be unnecessarily, or not necessarily, like it will be like kind of impossible to survive, and yet they're still walking, which a lot of these spoof films do. Like, I'm thinking sort of Scary Movie and that kind of stuff. Yeah, they're poking fun at the genre. This one is not at all. It's like very indebted to it, and it knows that, and it's very sweet, I think. For that reason.
I mean, I always think about that kind of opening after they've had that heavy night and they wake up in the morning and he goes to the shop, that one take. Just such a brilliant... I mean, I know we kind of lament one takes now as a kind of marketing device. It's largely overused both in film and television. But, as a device to kind of convey that kind of sort of sporadic, steadfast conviction to horror, it works so well. Like, people are running past him, terrified. Obviously, there's still comedy there in the sense that he is just totally...
He's
too hungover to notice. But there is, like, genuine... I can kind of think, like, parallels to 28 Days Later. The opening of Cillian Murphy walking around London. It feels like quite a good partner piece to that in that sense. In the way it kind of uses that kind of that singular character navigating a space to convey the kind of what's been happening away from the frame.
Yeah, and what's what's wrong all of a
Yeah,
sudden. Like
yeah.
The this sort of isolation and confusion and almost. I will talk about this more next week actually, but there's a sort of element of wish fulfillment as well,
Right.
in that you kind of imagine the world as more of an empty place, and it's all of a sudden your playground. And to sort of
Right.
see someone navigating a space like this, and he's able to get away with like just sort of not paying the correct amount for his doctor for his Diet Coke and the ice cream,
Right,
that
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing. I always think seeing empty spaces, and for it to be seen in Shaun of the Dead like that is really nice. And the floating camera definitely helps because it gives you a really nice idea of the space. And if you were to call it a spoof film, that would be the shot you would probably point to, saying, "Well, it's not really. It's actually really well crafted." And
totally.
It's like, as a piece of filmmaking, it endures, and it existed in a time when, the one take wasn't very well trodden ground still.
No,
Children of Men.
Or it certainly wasn't a kind of technique that was kind of opened up to kind of, again, as part of that kind of marketing toolkit. Which, as we've said many times, has kind of been the case, certainly with 1917.
And
even like things like I don't know why this is a bit of a, but like the kind of, there's one particular fight scene in the first season of Daredevil. I remember they banging on about that in the marketing material.
there's a behind the scenes clips shown.
Which
stuff.
was never, this idea of kind of, I know we kind of talked about this last week in the context of Mission Impossible and Tom Cruise's ridiculous stunts. That's being part of the marketing material and opening kind of like mass audiences up to the kind of intricacies of filmmaking. Of course, they don't spend ages detailing how much of it is standing around looking confused. But it's almost kind of like demystifying it a little bit. And I just think it's quite interesting that particular cinematic technique has been employed for that, as part of that kind of process but also as a way of inviting people to understand the sort of craft of filmmaking and the effort, which I do kind of subscribe to, because it is something that a lot of people aren't privy to. So I think it is, it's, from an outsider's point of view, it must be quite interesting, as much as I lament it.
I agree. I think it kind of gives you an insight into how difficult things like lighting are, which actually we were talking about right before we started recording.
And obviously we don't have any problems, as you can tell, for those watching. Beautifully lit.
But with spoofs,
and no quilt.
No quilt this time.
That was hilarious. We realised that at the end, didn't we?
We were just like, we've left it in frame. Oh god! At least we remembered this time. Because we've forgotten that once or twice. We're a work in progress. All right.
How long can we get away with that?
I don't know. Episode 200, we'll probably have to start. Bucking our ideas.
I agree.
We need to buy. But no, things like lighting, actually, that's another thing Shaun of the Dead is like, you forget, like, it's a handsome looking film as well. And most spoof films don't really give a shit.
It's about the content, isn't it?
It's like...
It's not made by... I think Edgar Wright is someone that is a total, he's film obsessed.
He's stylistically driven, isn't he?
Yeah, so like, that bleeds into his work. And it's such a main, he's kind of... we talk about Dusk Till Dawn. He's kind of reminiscent of that kind of approach to filmmaking, which is heavily indebted to the work of the filmmakers that they've kind of gorged on in their younger years. I think that reverence for the form, it's certainly in the case of Shaun of the Dead, gives it a kind of style that a lot of, as you say, those kind of more spoofy kind of horror movies don't have. With the spoofy horror movies, it's all about the joke and the gags, and as long as the cinematography is serviceable, that's all that matters. There's no artistry. And I'm not saying necessarily as a criticism, because you're not going to watch Scary Movie for the cinematography. I mean, maybe you are, I don't know, but but
you're less likely to watch
exactly. Whereas Shaun of the Dead, you can appreciate it on a broader cinematic level, not just as a really effective homage to zombie horror movies and George A. Romero, but also of just all the comedic stuff brought by Pegg and co. It's also just a very well-made movie. And that all ties together really well in kind of sort of cementing its place as one of the kind of great kind of, certainly kind of horror fusion comedy movies.
Definitely.
It's hard to think of many that come as close to that, and that fusion of both. I mean, the only one that comes to mind, and perhaps is better for me, is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Okay, yeah, that's goofy for
Yeah.
me. That's really. I watched it a lot later, so I don't have as much
Okay.
kind of reverence. Word we use a lot
Yeah.
for it, but I can totally see where you're coming from. Yeah, in it, it is definitely a
wild.
kind of slapstick comedy
It is
type thing. Yeah.
It's like, and it's weird to think that. And again, we say this all the time. Well, I've said this definitely a few times on the podcast, but it always reminds me of going back to what James Cameron said about Alien and Aliens. Like, you can't make another Aliens. There's just no point. I'm going to make what I know.
Yeah.
With Aliens.
And I'm going to take what I love about the first film, and then also
But I'm an action filmmaker.
Yeah, it's kind of what Edgar Wright did, I suppose. He must have because he clearly loved those zombie films and loved especially Dawn of the Dead. I think the influence of Dawn of the Dead is most apparent out of all of them.
Yeah, but he's not I mean, George A. Romero as a filmmaker, he's not particularly dynamic with his camera.
No.
Whereas you know, Edgar Wright relies extensively on that camera dynamism, not just to kind of bring a sense of prestige to his films, but also for comic effect.
Yes,
I mean, his kind of a lot of his kind of physical comedy, a lot of the camera is in on the joke.
Oh yeah, or generates the joke.
Yeah,
is the reason for the joke.
Yeah.
As opposed to dialogue, and I think that's pretty
Very unique to him, I think, in lots of ways.
Yeah,
he's not the only one to do it, of course.
No, and he's not the first. However, his use of it is so gleeful, and he did develop. I think he's developed that kind of the idea of the camera being a tool for comedy, like any other thing in a film, like music, like sound effects, like dialogue, like acting, performance. Yeah. It's like, why not use the camera as well to enhance the humor, like, and that can help with things like timing, which is notoriously hard and challenging in comedy. If you're able to cut, or if you're able to whip pan to something hilarious, and you can manipulate the timing, and for comedy that is like, I mean, I'm not comedian, as you can probably tell, but it is crucial for it to land, I think, and for him to be able to manipulate time in that fashion must be so sort of freeing, I suppose, in the editing room, I think, anyway. So
I think it's interesting when we think about, to sort of go back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and I was sort of thinking why it sort of works and why maybe Shaun of the Dead works, is that I think there's a kind of fine line between sort of fear and kind of laughter. There's a kind of giddiness in both that is very similar. And I think if you can sort of bring both of those elements together and kind of do that in a way that is respectful of, I guess in the case of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, respectful of the kind of source material in a way. I mean, they are such different movies. Obviously, everyone knows my well-documented love for the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I was like you. I was very late to see it, and I was like, I think Lee actually turned me onto it. I think we watched it together, maybe.
Yeah,
and
Lee's always
he's been a big fan of it, and I was fully expecting to hate it just because I have such reverence for the first one, but I just loved it. I thought it really bought into, it expanded the mythology. But it was kind of like aware of the fact that it was never going to have that kind of seismic impact that the first one did. So it had to do something different. It had to take another dimension, and then it lent, as you say, into that goofy slapstick, almost kind of like Buster Keaton style at points kind of comedy, which is weirdly in the first one. There is something kind of like the physicality of the violence in the first film. You could certainly draw parallels between that and kind of like physical comedy. The kind of like over dramatic sort of, or I guess the over dramatic manner of Leatherface's movement as with the chainsaw. It's almost I remember just seeing that scene in isolation recently and thinking, without the context of the movie, that's quite, it's not, obviously I know it's great, and it is quite chilling to me because I love the movie, but seeing that in isolation, there is something faintly goofy about that.
It's like Michael Keaton's performance in Beetlejuice. It's the same kind of physicality, and even I'm thinking now, like Brain Dead. You've seen Peter Jackson's Brain Dead. It's got that. sort of idea, the seed of an idea of that in it. Obviously, it's largely overtaken, I think, by its content and its simplicity.
Yeah.
But the second one like doubles down on that idea, and it is very Beetlejuice and Brain Dead. Actually, the second
It's
one.
almost like a carnival ending, isn't there? From memory, it's like they go into, it's like a ride through into this.
Yeah, there's like an underground that they're in like a.
Is it a mine shaft or something?
But it's lit like a fairground.
park. Yeah.
Like lots of purples and kind of and sort of mustard yellows, and it lends itself well to the horrific looking. Are they like brother and sister? I can't remember. Like those sort of gnarly, nasty, scabby people.
Yeah.
That made me feel a bit sick actually watching the film. Yeah.
I think that's Hooper having fun. Like Hooper's Canon film deal. It was that Life Force and Invaders from Mars, the remake.
Oh, okay. I've not seen Invaders from Mars.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I quite like it, but then I'm a big Tobe Hooper fan, so
yeah.
But I think he's always had that sort of sense of humour, that sort of that kind of gallows humour, which you see in like Poltergeist. You see in as he sort of just blasts ethereal light through the American family, the American nuclear family, and all of their frittering suburban dreams and their disregard of like tradition and the culture that came before them and all that kind of stuff. He's always had that kind of sharp, satirical, comical eye.
Yeah.
And I think by that point, and it works in the context of just working with Canon films as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think by that point he'd really honed that kind of comedic side of himself as a filmmaker and that satirical edge, which the satirical edge perhaps is lacking in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 because it doesn't need it. But that kind of sense of humour, and obviously throwing Dennis Hopper in there, just obviously is going to work.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Someone that spent a large portion of his career taking himself far too seriously, and obviously has his own demons.
Yeah.
But seeing him fight Leatherface with a chainsaw and a sort of duel was just the icing on the cake,
Again, a fusion of another sort of swashbuckling genre in it for a little minute.
Yeah. No, I just think that it's funny that horror and comedy seem to work together quite well. It can be quite a fruitful genre pairing.
Yes.
Also, I think comedy is just one of the easiest. Not easy. It's very hard to make something legitimately funny, isn't it? But comedy seems to be the kind of genre that is tacked onto other genres more readily.
Yeah,
action comedy. Yeah,
romantic comedy, horror comedy. Yeah. You could even have like a dramedy, right? They're pretty. Yeah, they're quite common as well. So yeah, you get out of every genre. That's the one that you can almost, because like I suppose if you see going to the cinema as entertainment, it would be weird for a film to have zero jokes. Like I can think of a few, but the subject matter of those films is so serious that it would be insulting to subject matter if you were to add a joke in it. But the majority of films, like Star Wars, has got a lot of jokes in it. Sometimes like comic relief is sort of very much needed in a film that's otherwise like relentlessly brutal. And even if it's very dark humor, it can work nicely.
Yeah, I mean, levity's strange, isn't it? I think some filmmakers use humor to accentuate the kind of themes of the movie, but in a more mainstream sense, I guess you could say it's more levity. It's more to offset. Like you say, darker themes, or kind of like it can prevent a film from kind of leaning too much into one genre.
Yes,
too much.
Yeah, exactly. For some reason, another Rodriguez film popped into my mind just now with regards to genre blending, and it's not one that AI gave me. It's one I thought of on my own.
God,
oh my God!
Take that.
Remember Sin City?
Yeah,
like the sort of fusion of the comic book genre. I say comic book. Frank Miller would call it a graphic novel, and obviously I kind of semi-agree with it. It is more of a graphic novel, but that and the kind of far-reaching crime caper, I guess, with sort of lots of interconnected characters. And I know it's based on a comic, but I thought that
Graphic novel.
Yeah, graphic novel. Sorry, Frank. But I thought that was another example of just a kind of nice genre mashup a little bit, because we're used to seeing superhero films, aka comic book movies, as like that is the genre, I suppose, and to have a film like Sin City, it was one of the first. I mean, I know you had like Darkman and stuff before that, but it was sort of one of the first which took the graphic novel very, very seriously from a visual standpoint, and also did a really good job of adapting the crime caper sort of side of things with like hordes of characters. It's indebted to things like Pulp Fiction, right? In that you're kind of like hopping between different stories.
Yeah, that kind of the kind of noirish obscurification of narrative.
Yeah,
to kind of accentuate the kind of either the pointlessness of it all, or the kind of thanklessness of their situation, or or bureaucracy. It tends to work really well for that. And I agree. I think it's strange that in the kind of early 2000s we had like Watchmen and Sin City, and this is kind of like before obviously superhero films became what they are now. And it's interesting that I guess it's because they borrowed from the kind of more revered comic books, the kind of ones that even people that don't read comic books, like even people that don't like comics would have read Watchmen.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So like because of that kind of that, I guess the willingness from the point of Alan Moore or Frank Miller, not that they're similar in kind of theme or style, but it's sort of they're not afraid to use the medium of comic books to tackle something grander, bigger, than just kind of having a guy going, "Oh, I'm a nerd." Spider bit me on the bollocks, and now
Oh,
May. That's a weird sequence of events.
I don't remember that scene. It must have been.
Oh no! But I wake up in a fever dream, sweating like I am now. Actually, thinking about it,
swollen testicles. Yeah.
I think you're right. That I think they need obviously that the source material to be like that, to have already previously lent into that kind of stuff. And I guess the directors, obviously Rodriguez and
Zachary Snyder,
at that time in his career anyway, were a bit more kind of, their style suited that more. They did the kind of more like front and center sort of superhero.
Yeah, sort of a washed with grey. Yeah. I do miss those days in a funny way. It was quite a bold move.
Yeah,
anyway.
It would have probably been seen as that bold nowadays because so many films. Like, I mean, The Joker's a good example of another one.
Oh yeah, that's
like
true.
a film that's like, ooh,
am I a comic book movie?
What sets The Joker apart from Sin City is that the Joker is relying on people becoming fatigued with the kind of superhero narrative conventions that were well established by like the Marvel-y movies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then it's then going, well, we can take it in a direction via the kind of like the scuzzy dirt of New Hollywood in the 1970s.
Yes.
And then we'll take it to a new direction. But of course, largely ineffective in that way. I mean, our disdain for that film is well documented.
It is, yeah. We're slightly more polarised on the second one. Like, I didn't like it. I think you were slightly...
I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
Which I takes a lot of my pride to say.
No, it's fair enough.
Because I really didn't like the first one at all.
I thought the second one was pretty naff as well. But...
Oh, it is naff. It's totally naff.
But
again, musical.
Yeah, there you go. Another genre.
Musical seems to be one of these things that people just do. It's like, oh, a musical, that's crazy.
Yeah.
How
bold.
Because I guess musicals sort of famously are a bit of a, they're a tough sell for a lot of people.
Yeah, myself included.
I'm a convert, man. I like a good musical.
I still haven't kind of experienced that yet. I like the odd one, but... I
mean, Jacques Demy does some banging musical films that are actually quite dark and cynical.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Does the music...
Umbrellas of Cherbourg. Ooh, baby.
I think... Okay, I
really
haven't actually seen Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
And the girls of Rochnfort. I can't pronounce it.
That's all right.
But, what's interesting about particularly Umbrellas of Cherbourg, that's more in my memory for some reason, but is that his kind of colour palette, it's pastels, it's pinks, it's blues, it's almost, saccharinely coloured, beautifully done, almost like a Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked to the point of shaving my entire body if I was wrong in saying this.
Right, yeah.
Shocked to the point. I would be, I'd be shocked if Wes Anderson wasn't hugely influenced by Jack Stemme's use of kind of mise en scène backdrops,
muted pastel colours, and yeah.
Just briefly, it's like about a woman falling in love with a man, and he goes off to fight, and it's about her dealing with that. And even though it's the whole scene, all the dialogue is sang.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, but it's like quite a sad, bitter mediation on love.
Really?
And the musical, typically, certainly in that time, was used to kind of uplift.
Yeah.
To kind of take people away from the kind of sadness and bitterness of life. Whereas Demi's using the backdrops, using the kind of actors you'd imagine to see in a musical, using that kind of buoyant kind of music for a musical.
Okay.
But the actual content and the themes are really quite sad. Ultimately, it starts off quite hopeful.
Yeah,
but
right.
by the end, it ends in a way that kind of makes me it kind of felt like kind of the ending, at least kind of thematically envisioned, like Paris, Texas.
Right, yeah.
The ending of their meeting.
Yeah.
I really recommend it.
Okay.
And again, that's another kind of example of the blending of genre.
Yes, yeah, certainly.
Using the musical or using a genre that's so typically expected to do one thing, to give you this one thing that you want, and actually undermining it in a way that makes the underlying message more potent and more powerful as a result of doing that,
Oh man, okay. So this is it. This is my disdain for musicals, I think, stems largely from the over sort of floweriness of them.
Yeah.
They can be quite twee, or they can be quite American and in your face and overt and like an assault for me anyway. So to have it spun like that might be good for me. Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not. I quite like Sweeney Todd. I even like the Tim Burton one. I think it's pretty funny. But the songs are my least favourite bit about it, and they're famous songs. They're the reason why people know Sweeney Todd.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I'll have to give it a go because it sounds.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not that well versed with musicals or musical theatre, but I know obviously there's a rich history of that tradition anyway, of kind of subverting genre or audience expectations. But I guess cinematically speaking, the musical has been used as more of an uplifting thing. But there's darkness in it. Even fucking hell, Mary Poppins lady.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Her.
That film. What?
Bed knobs and broomsticks?
No, that's Angela Lansbury.
Yeah, fuck, of course.
How could you get her?
I don't know. It's a similar.
Yeah, come on.
Vibe.
No, you can't. You can't do that. Not to Angela.
I'm sorry, Angela.
That's okay.
For listening.
Oh, I represent her estate. And her emotions. And I think that's what she'd say. She'd say,
"You're wrong.
You're wrong, Ben." And it was callous of you, but I will let you off.
Oh, cheers, Angela.
That's okay.
What's it like at the moment?
Is she still alive?
No, I don't think so.
I completely forgot. Oh God, I'm doing a terrible job of this estate.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You should
Put
know
the
that.
Ouija
Really.
board down. This is a glass.
I hope she is dead now, actually, because if
hope
she is,
Angela Lansbury's dead.
No, I don't hope she's dead. I wish she was alive, but based on what I said just then, I'm like, if she is alive, and I've just said she's dead, yeah, let's check. Just
I've got a feeling she has left us.
Yeah.
Lansbury.
I'm gonna have she's gonna haunt me now.
She died. She died in 11th of October 2022.
Oh man,
a career spanned 80 years.
Fuck, that's mad.
Yeah.
Should we see the Mary
Weirdly
Poppins
enough, for some reason, when you type her name into Google, there's also a picture of a pig with a sombrero and a guitar.
See, that's bizarre.
That's just the internet in a nutshell, isn't it?
Well, I typed in Angela, but before I got there, it just took me to Battle of Los Angeles. So as a Wikipedia
Rage Against the Machine
page.
album.
No, the
Battlefall or
the
something.
occurrence. I think it was like a sort of UFO scare in the 40s. So
Okay.
again, sorry, Angela, I can't even get to your Wikipedia page to see if you're dead or not.
Yeah.
I'm too busy. Being sidetracked by UFO scares.
I'm thinking
I
of.
think we should move on.
I'm thinking of a musical with her in it, and it's really famous. I think it's during World War II.
Okay.
It's the most famous one.
Is that one of the most famous musicals?
Yeah, probably the most famous film musical of all time. The Von Trapp family.
Fucking Sound of Music.
Sound of Music.
Oh, of course. Yeah, right.
Oh,
there we
God.
go. Keep
Sorry,
all that
yeah,
in.
God.
It's genuine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to get chastised for not remembering that. I know that because I know Hannah, and I think Hannah's mum's a huge Sound
Lansbury
of Music
fan.
fan. Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
right, no, okay. We're back.
I don't know
actually
about
really
Lansbury.
love Diagnosis. No, that's not it.
No.
I think the reason I get Diagnosis Murder and
Sound of
Murder She
Music.
Wrote confused
Yeah.
is because I always wanted a crossover and it never happened. I'm actually quite a fan of both of those programs. So
Oh, there we go. And we never got like a tie-in
no, we
from one
didn't.
to the other.
No.
Not yet, anyway.
Dick Van Dyke's still alive. So maybe a CGI Angela Lansbury.
Yeah, Bob Hoskins, as you would like to always say, he's in it somehow.
Somehow, yeah,
CGI Bob
inexplicably
Hoskins.
CGI. It's millions of pounds. Sorry, Sound of Music. There is something that's quite dark.
Very dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's there. So I'm not saying that Jack Demme was the first person to do it, but you know,
Everyone remembers that for the happy bit.
Yeah.
The flowers and the
Yeah,
dancing and But no, you're right to in the same vein as It's a Wonderful Life, everyone remembers that for the happy bit at the end. You forget the darkness that led you to that happiness.
yeah, that's the more I watch that film, the more I realise how much of a searing sort of anti-capitalist tale that is,
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
and how sad it is.
Which is
And the end still, but because it's so earnest in those convictions, it's just that kind of otherwise an ending that, if watched in isolation, would be saccharine to the point of just vomit or cascading from every orifice.
Yeah, I finished. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Don't want to apologise. Watching it obviously with that, it's beautiful. What a beautiful ending. What a lovely movie.
I know. Yeah, we should talk about that. It was actually, we were going to do it as our episode 1. Do you remember? It's a Wonderful... I remember watching it.
Oh,
and then-
because we would do a Christmas film, wouldn't we?
Yeah, and then it...
Have we done a Christmas episode?
I don't think we did, Because I think we did the Zone of Interest around that time of year.
Fucking hell, yeah.
So
Not what I'd call a Christmas movie.
No.
Okay, yeah, maybe we need to do that then.
Yeah, I'd love to, because I did... eventually we did Avatar because it came out early Jan.
And we wanted the hits.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
got
we wanted
pause for the hits.
The early hits, yeah. So
Yeah. Okay, well there we go then. We'll go for that.
it's in the cards, in the post. Yeah, we'll do that festive season this year. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Did you want to chat a little about samurai films? Because I mean, if you list a few, I might have seen one of them. Like, I don't know, is Rashomon? Would you really say that is?
Yeah,
I've seen that and I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is in the sense that it's set in that period and some of the principal characters are samurais.
Yeah, okay.
But it's,
I know it's more of a narrative sort of
I mean,
experiment.
I think it's just worth sort of dabbling with the genre, given that Tornado is, heavily indebted to that.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah.
And as we've sort of alluded to in our discussion about genre films or the genre films that blend genre, one of the things I think we touched on a little bit was the kind of taking of
Pelham 1, 2, 3. Sorry. Sorry. Totally.
it's
threw
such
you
a
off.
fucking specific joke, but
Yeah.
only for film people.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Oh no, I love it. That's fantastic. No, the taking a character that you just so associate not just with a genre but a culture and a setting, and plonking it in something completely alien.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
and that's what I thought that Tornado did brilliantly.
Oh,
We'll
yeah.
get into that.
Yeah.
And also, I wanted to make a slight. I want to go back to the previous episode where I said Red Moon. I think it's Red Sun.
Oh, yeah, you did. Yeah.
Yeah.
That-
My quality control sweep, and I saw that. I went, oh,
That's
So
all right.
I'm gonna. Just
They're both
clear the air
celestial
now.
bodies. It's easy to confuse the two.
That's true. But they like Redsun.
Yeah.
Toshiro Mifune, of course, who is famously known for his collaborations with Akira Kurosawa, both samurai movies and the kind of like noirish crime films they did together.
Yeah.
A very fruitful creative collaboration, one of the best. They fell out briefly.
Did they?
Oh
man.
But I think they were friends again before the end. I think. I might
That's
be
always
wrong with
nice
that.
when you hear about
Yeah, 'cause sometimes
reconciliation.
it just doesn't happen. It's like, oof.
Yeah, quite reconciliation, a theme in a lot of Kurosawa's films. Of
Yes,
course.
yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
But Mifune is in the Wild West in Redsun.
Oh, okay.
I think I mentioned this a couple of times now. In very recent.
Mifune comes up quite a lot on this podcast.
Yeah,
actually.
I love
yeah.
it. But with Charles Bronson and Alan Delon. And it's just like, I don't really remember the plot of the movie so much because I'm just there going, this is so strange.
Yeah,
Seeing
yeah.
someone that I'm just so used to seeing, mostly in black and white, mostly in, Japanese films.
Yeah.
Seeing him I think he just killing American Indians with a samurai sword,
Right. Okay. Yeah.
which in itself is a bit odd. I know Mifune did do a bit of work with Western filmmakers. He worked with John Borman, and
Really?
Lee Marvin.
Okay.
A film, Hell in the Pacific, I think it's called.
Is that a John Borman film?
Yeah,
I've not seen it. I've seen Excalibur and Deliverance, and I think that's the only two.
Ah,
no,
okay.
wait. The Exorcist 3? Is that John Borman?
is that John Borman?
He did one of the
that's David.
That's William Peter Blatty.
Yeah.
Did Borman do the second one?
I don't know,
I think he might have done. So I've seen 3 Borman movies.
but that's a great movie. That's
Yeah.
about a Japanese. I think is it a fighter pilot, American fighter pilot who crashes in an island in the Pacific, and there's a Japanese soldier who he survives a bombardment or something like that, and they are forced to cohabit on this island.
Okay,
So
really?
all
Yeah.
of their kind of hatred for one another
Yeah.
starts to boil down as their relationship, because the war's raging around them, but this is survival. And it's about, and the tension comes from how much do they hold on to these kind of this ideology that in this moment of survival means nothing.
Yeah, they have to rely on each other. What a premise.
And
That's
it's aided by the fact that Lee Marvin was, I think, fought in the Pacific as a US Marine,
Okay.
and Toshiro Mifune was involved in the war in some capacity. I can't remember I think he was a soldier or a pilot. I can't remember, but he made Lee Marvin go to one of the conditions for shooting the movie is that he made him go to I think it's a temple or somewhere and give an
Really?
offering. Yeah.
Oh,
because it was
wow,
a
okay.
big thing for him that
Cultural
making this
cross-pollination, I suppose. Or
and it's such a vicious. The whole obviously no war is not vicious, but
Yeah.
the fighting in the Pacific was
yeah,
brutal. And I think a lot of those wounds were still festering and felt on both sides. And but Lee Marvin had such admiration for Toshiro Mifune, he really wanted to work with him.
Yeah. Oh,
And
wow.
I think obviously he had a respect for him and what he wanted to do. I think it wasn't through grit teeth. I don't think.
Oh, wow. That's really...
It's an interesting side story, anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
I mean, that really ties into what we're going to talking about a bit later on about, like I say, cultural cross-pollination.
yeah, and that's
the
in
idea.
a sense that film, Hell in the Pacific works in that context as well, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's very strange to see him in that way. But when I think about samurai movies, of course, I think about Seven Samurai, Sanjuro, Yojimbo, Hidden Fortress. They're
Is
the
that a more
kind
recent one, Hidden Fortress? Maybe I've just seen an up-to-date Blu-ray
Ran.
on it. Or something.
Ran is one of his coloured ones. So that might be the one that's.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
But he's just what is great about Kurosawa, and I think it's so foundational to him. Of course, there are so many great Japanese filmmakers that have made great samurai films. It's not just Kurosawa, but I think it's kind of foundational in the sense of what the themes of samurai movies are, and in relation to kind of Tornado, the ideas about kind of attachment to one's culture
Yeah.
and loyalty and honor are very central themes in samurai films, because the sort of caste system was very much dependent on this idea of honor,
Okay.
sacrifice in battle,
God, yeah.
and
Things that might be quite
loyalty.
alien to Americans.
Yeah,
right?
and but also loyalty, often a kind of self-destructive kind of loyalty.
Yes.
a loyalty that often goes at odds with your sort of humanity.
Okay.
And that's a very common theme. So, that is very common, particularly in the context of samurai films. But also, in Japanese society at that time, samurais were quite high in the societal rank.
Okay.
So there's a lot of films that play with that idea, like farmers and peasants were very lowly and often, subject to a lot of maltreatment from samurai, So this idea of samurais being these kind of loyal, faultless beings, it's kind of the same way the West, I think, treats knights.
I was just about to mention knights.
The West thinks to think that knights were like these kind of like infallible beings that took an oath and they lived through it, whereas
they were like landowners.
Yeah,
basically.
They were rich people who did terrible things to their subjects because they knew they could get away with it because the caste system allowed them to do that.
Yeah, and it kind of encouraged it, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. So
that's always interesting to me.
It is, and it's become an icon of the West, very much how I guess you could argue the samurai is perhaps a more enduring symbol of Japanese culture than the knight is of Western culture, I think. But
yeah, maybe Britain, I'd say, with knights.
Yeah,
more so than the West generally. But yeah, I would say that they are kind of figureheads of.
You always see people dressed as crusaders and kind of like horrible EDL rallies, don't you?
Yeah, well, there you go. That says it all. But you also see like knights, like kind of armor in National Trust places quite a lot. So,
okay,
it's a symbol that is sort of embraced by a lot of a variety of different groups
maybe
of
not
people.
just right wing.
Yeah,
yeah.
But I'm not saying that National Trust isn't without fault.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, no.
I was going to pull you up on that.
But do not worry. I know I've got a lot of information in the bank about the National Trust. But
I thought you wouldn't have to spend £8 on a meagre bowl of chips. The National Trust has your back.
How much is that?
Thimble's worth of thick cut potato.
Yeah. How much is that? A flapjack?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
And they're always saying, "Well, it's for the grounds."
Yeah, is it?
Fuck off.
Grounds look pretty good already. Suspiciously good.
Yeah.
When you get a gardener in once a year.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Again, but yeah, you're right. The samurai, to me anyway, I actually didn't know that about their kind of behaviour. In reality, that it might be not quite as squeaky clean as I had imagined.
Well, it's interesting because there was a game that came out recently, Ghost of Tsushima.
Okay.
And I only played a bit of it, and then my controller broke. I stopped playing it. And it also made my PlayStation sound like I was sort of like in a Chinook that was taking off. But like, that was a real interesting part of discussion about that a lot of people kind of criticised it for this kind of fanciful portrayal of the samurai code. And this idea, again, that samurais were like, that they were without fault. Once they kind of took this role, it was very much about them kind of, doing good things. And the game came under criticism for that portrayal.
Okay.
Which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
It was only fairly recent, but funnily enough, in Japan, it sold quite well.
Did it?
So, and there was a kind of an article. I mean, it's by no means makes this definitive or me an expert, but it's the article was sort of positing this idea that it plays into that idea of national image,
right? Yeah, okay.
Very well. Which obviously every country wants this national image to look good.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what we were saying about the samurai being that icon of Japanese culture, very much because of these kinds of films from the Kurosawas and the Mizoguchis and all these kind of...
Okay.
But, those ideas are really interesting. But, I mean, if you stray away from Kurosawa, you get great films like Sword of Doom.
Okay.
Which is just this sort of about this idea of the kind of like a samurai who's really skilled and is just horrible.
Okay, yeah.
He has no sort of, he's unfeeling about his, about the way he uses his skill.
Okay.
So that totally undermines this kind of idea about what the samurai, I often think that these kind of movies did to the samurai what like, sort of smart, kind of like, I don't know, like Sam Peckinpah did to the cowboy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because obviously the cowboy is symbol of American again, probably the archetypal symbol of America. If you're going to caricature a historical figure,
Yes, prosperity. Yeah,
cowboy, sort of brave,
freewheeling.
yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously
Lawless,
we all know
yeah.
exactly. We all know the West was a horrible, lawless place full of murder and
Disease.
disease. And
Inequality. Immediate inequality.
I was about to say in we. Lots of we.
Lots of yeah.
More so in the Wild West than anywhere else.
Yeah. I mean, you have to keep hydrated. It does get hot.
I think cowboys had to wear wellies, which they don't in the films.
Really?
No.
Cut that out. That's fucking. Of course, he's making a joke. And I thought, maybe the early Great Plains were a lot more muddy than we had been led to believe.
I was still carrying on with the urine thing.
No. I thought that was long gone.
Sorry, I should have been more specific.
I know. I love it. Shows how little I know about the West.
I don't know.
No. Yeah, definitely. There's the cultural symbol. And then there's a reality, and then there's the kind of fetishization of that, which kind of bubbles up in media, and then eventually is sort of breaks to reveal the truth, I guess.
Yeah, and I think something like Sword of Doom is particularly interesting because it's that unfeeling idea, and being in that caste system not necessarily allows him, because there are a lot of people around him that have a disdain for him because of this attitude towards he doesn't treasure human beings at all.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And but because he's so skilled, people are too scared to and then someone has to train to get this particular technique that's going to beat him.
Oh, okay.
But the ending is just this kind of sort of sweaty kaleidoscopic descent into madness as this guy suddenly starts to become burdened by the guilt of everyone he's killed.
Oh, okay.
So it's this kind of and it's him sort of reflecting on that as he's fighting off this band of people that have come to kill him.
Oh, wow.
So it's just it's amazing.
So
it's
as soon as he's confronted with judgment, it's that's when the realization kicks in.
Yeah.
That he's kind of been manipulated by his own success, I guess.
Yeah.
I haven't actually seen the film. I could be talking shit.
You're kind of there really. I'd recommend it.
Idea. Yeah.
I was also going to talk about, and I'm going to get it.
Oh my god! There's a video exclusive for anyone listening to the audio. Danny's getting a DVD off the shelf. I say DVD. I probably mean Blu-ray, of course.
Don't you dare!
Oh, it's a Eureka! It is. Sorry.
I really hope I don't have a sweaty back. I just revealed it. It's so warm in here.
Yeah, it's a hot day. 25.
It's a hot day, and obviously sitting in front of LED lights.
Oh, yeah.
Closing the doors and windows for you. Duel to the death.
Oh man. Okay. Wow.
This isn't a movie that was made in Japan. It's a Chinese martial arts film.
Oh right. Okay.
And
there it is.
But it's about, I can't remember exactly the sort of time frame. Oh, I guess it says at the burp. Every 10 years, the best swordsman from China and the best swordsman from Japan fight each other.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It kind of, it's about the idea of these kind of national pride or nationalism.
Yeah, right.
And there's a lot hanging on each, the samurai and the kind of Chinese martial artist.
Right, okay.
And it's not explicitly a samurai film in the same sense that, obviously, Kurosawa or, any other, or Sword of Doom. But what I think really stands up about it is that comment on nationalism, and in the same way that there's a couple of other kind of martial arts movies of the time that I think we sort of talked about this before, but karate and kung fu was obviously with Bruce Lee and all that kind of stuff. It was in the West,
right? Yeah,
there was almost like a rivalry, a cultural rivalry, a historical rivalry based on obviously the kind of Japanese occupation of China and a lot of obviously very strong feelings of anger and resentment, very much influenced by nationalism in itself.
Yeah.
But there were a few martial arts movies that came out that kind of poked fun at the notion of competing with one another. And, you know, I just think it's really interesting for that reason, because it kind of ends with, they do duel, but there's a kind of sense of respect there that as the story goes on, they realise there's kind of nefarious forces at play. And I think they briefly have to, I think if memory serves me correctly, they have to sort of team up.
Okay, yeah. Breaking down the barriers of nationalism.
Yeah, and it's just a really, really great movie. I mean, I'm kind of, it's funny, I'm professing my love for it without being able to remember key parts of the narrative.
Oh, no, it just means it's due for a rewatch. That's all it is. Like, you remember the broad themes.
I mean, that's it. Yeah. My memory will never remember, narratives, but I can always remember thinking, God, that was good.
Imagine if I was like, what's the main character called? Scrambling at the blurb.
And I don't have the luxury of being kind of like not being filmed to be able to do that. But it's a really interesting movie in that sense that, it's kind of a cultural fusion of China and Japan. Yeah. Two cultures that, as I say, were very much in opposition to each other, not just geographically or historically, but also culturally, in the sense that their output was, of not just their sort of martial arts were kind of, spreading across the West, but also the kind of, I guess, the cinematic output. Was in conflict. Not conflict, sorry, was in, I guess, competing.
Yeah.
Competing for kind of a global audience.
Yes, and it's sort of East Asian majority, I suppose, in the sense of like, what is the world going to think of when they think of like East Asian cinema? Is it going to be Japanese or is it going to be Chinese? I mean, both countries have some amazing cinematic output, and that's interesting. Yeah,
really great example of a kind of samurai film a semi-samurai film that explores something a little bit different. Nice. And I thought was particularly interesting in the context of that kind of shared cultural experience, which is very much in the vein of Tornado.
Yeah,
although Tornado is a lot more overt.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot. I think. I mean, what I loved about it was, aside from the fact that it looks gorgeous, like really, really kind of weirdly. I mean, we talk about nationalism.
Yeah.
The one thing that it made me feel was like a sort of sense of pride about our geography in England. I was like, wow, we really do have some striking. I've like recently been to the Lake District, and you kind of can't help but sort of look up, similar to like when you go to a big city and there's skyscrapers everywhere. So it had that going for it, like in terms of the visual style, but the way it handled the introduction of another culture into this stark English 1790s sort of landscape. It just said British Isles in the beginning. That was where it was set. So I kind of felt like it was more of Scotland.
I'm not quite sure as to maybe that vagueness was intentional.
I think it was. It must have been. Like, I don't know whether
certainly be in keeping with the kind of film more broadly, I think.
Yes, I don't think it's really concerned with geography specifics. No. Like, it's not going to be set in Newcastle, is it, in 1790? We never know. Maybe it was. Maybe we missed a subtitle.
Possibly.
Tornado. I think I had a slightly milder reaction to it than you, possibly for the aforementioned. There's that word again, reverence for this kind of cinema. So I don't know if you want to touch on that a bit.
In a way that kind of was working against it for me, really, because I think, we talk about this idea, when we talk about these kind of cross-genre movies, a lot of them are so dependent on you, not necessarily having a fixed understanding of what that genre is, but I guess it does create a series of expectations. Certainly through the lens of modern cinema, which is a lot more kind of, it does pander to expectation in a much more upfront manner.
Okay, yeah.
And what I was concerned about was very much that it was going to be like, kind of like a sort of great British version of Kill Bill.
Yeah, okay.
Do you know what I mean?
I see,
and don't get me wrong, I like Kill Bill, but, Tarantino is very much someone that, I know we've mentioned him already in the context of...
Oh, yeah, briefly.
His involvement with Dusk Till Dawn, but... Or did we? I don't know. I can't remember. It was a while ago.
We was chatting about Rodriguez as well. He's got close ties with Tarantino. We've been there.
Yeah. But obviously, Tarantino is bringing... he's enthusiastically kind of thrusting... his love.
Just cut there. Just end it there.
He's enthusiastically kind of like thrusting his sort of like encyclopedic knowledge of world cinema in the direction of a mainstream Western audience.
Yeah. Okay.
And he sort of kind of semi gets away with it. I can understand the detractors in that view, but I was concerned, given that style of filmmaking is quite popular, popularized by Tarantino, but done worse just in the context of modern Hollywood. It's total lack of any kind of subtlety or mediating on things, for longer than 10 seconds.
It's like Shanghai Noon or something.
Like I was sort of expecting something like that. Even though it's John Maclean and Slow West was anything but that.
Yes.
You just sort of feel like, even filmmakers like him, who obviously have a very singular voice, even they can fall victim to that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We talk about in the context of like Robert Eggers, for example.
Okay, yeah, you think
like The Northman, that budget. I mean, I liked The Northman, but the budget definitely. I don't want to say definitely because that's just I know for sure. But
60 million.
I felt that budget impacted aspects of narrative that you didn't see in his previous work.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. Yeah,
so
it was. Yeah.
In the case of John Maclean and Tornado, I'm thinking, is that going to be the case?
Okay, yeah.
And I was really pleased to see that it wasn't.
Yeah, okay.
And it was very much Maclean's style to not be like that, and the fact that he kept it that way. I was really. It was very. I don't know if tasteful is the wrong word, but it took. Obviously, Maclean has a reverence for samurai cinema.
Yeah,
he has a love for it, and it's there. You can see that.
Yeah.
But it's done in a way that it's done, I guess, with greater sort of tact.
Yeah,
and it leans. That tact allows it to kind of, I guess, the kind of motifs and the themes and ideas of samurai cinema to kind of bleed into what is an alien landscape.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? And it brings them closer in a way that the kind of genre immediately isn't.
Yeah, I think again. Going back to that visual standpoint, I was surprised by how well they melded together the kind of Eastern sensibilities and the British sensibilities, because we get, this is an odd sort of thing to say, but we get quite nice autumn light in England, and we get the leaves really are auburn, and that style really lent itself to this film and the sort of Eastern sensibility and the samurai sensibilities in a way that I thought they would be at odds with each other. I thought it'd be weird seeing a samurai fight in a peat bog, but it wasn't. It entirely worked. I really like that about it. I also really enjoyed the fact that every time she goes to sort of have a battle with one of these bandits, her Tornado, that is, the style, even the cinematography and the kind of style of fighting changes and shifts according to the aggressor's kind of
own skill set or choice of weapon
and weaknesses as well. I really liked that about the third act chiefly as well. It contains a sequence of different sort of showdowns.
And the showdowns aren't, I think we sort of in an attempt, the way that action is covered. I mean, John Wick is probably in part mostly responsible for this. So I don't mean this necessarily negatively, but that kind of, or Gareth Evans.
Yeah.
With the Raid films, not Gareth Edwards.
No, well done. Got it right.
Thank you. Yeah, for a second I was like, "Shit, did I get that right?"
I nearly said John Maclean earlier as well.
Did you?
I was like, no.
That kind of frenetic, that style of shooting action films. That they're relying very much on their performers and their skill set. And I know we've praised that, but a lot of the samurai movies, their kind of fighting style was obviously very much influenced by the kind of techniques and everything that's been used on the history. But, it's not necessarily people that are proficient. Do you know what I mean? And there's something in that. There's almost more... I'm trying to think of the word. It's almost more theatric.
Oh yeah,
Which again lends
100%,
itself,
yeah.
there's a theatricality to the build up, the leaves blowing away. I think of all the classic samurai showdowns. They walk down a road, stare at each other, click the tops of the katanas, and the leaves go by, and it's like,
Oh, and then there's the
there's a
puppet show.
theatricality, and the puppet show is that. It is that.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
you see it again with these kind of showdowns.
Yeah.
But then you've got these kind of like British men going, "Oh, help me!"
Yeah,
and it's just
like bumbling bandits.
there's that kind of like theatrical, very kind of, I guess, theatrical approach to the sort of moments before a showdown.
Yeah,
And that kind of one move, and then the cut as she sheathes the katana and the guy's dead.
There's a bit where she very semi-gracefully cleans her sword off, and it's there, but it's not John Wicky, is it? It's like a bit clunky and a bit...
It's very much in favor, going back to that, the kind of theatricality of it.
Yes.
Which a lot of, Japanese cinema is, particularly samurai movies are indebted to kind of like that kind of Japanese style of theatre. I forget the name of it. But there's a Japanese style of theatre which is obviously very action heavy.
Okay, yeah.
And you see that translate to the movies.
Yeah.
And I think I've said theatricality about 7 times. That's kind of, that's such an important part of the samurai movies.
Yeah.
And I thought that Maclean really utilised that well. And it was a way that kind of worked with the kind of more meditative pacing of the film, the kind of monosyllabic nature of the dialogue, the trust in the camera.
Yeah.
And the filming of these kind of sparse locations to do a lot of the kind of expositionary, I guess, storytelling, or not just expositionary.
Yeah.
Or not just that, but the thematic heavy lifting too.
Yeah, there's a morality tale interwoven into this, isn't there?
Totally.
That's interesting.
It's not overt. It's not nodded to.
Yeah.
It's just there. And Maclean's conviction in filming just these little moments, like stuff fluttering in the wind, and this kind of like little troupe of circus performers, the wide shot of them holding that for that bit longer. Just the language of the camera is just so much more apparent with this film. And it's not so reliant on the kind of like snappy quickness of like action movies of now. And I know it's perhaps a bit weird to compare them to the kind of John Wick style movies, indeed kind of movies more broadly in that sense.
I think we're sort of spoilt with that kind of stuff now, though, because John Wick, you can see in 10, 11 years, you can see its influence on other films, some of which do it reasonably well, some of which do it horrendously badly, usually relegated to sort of the lower echelons of Netflix. And then, I agree with you, actually. Whilst the slow pace of this was a slight... For me, maybe I was just in a jazzed, I was expecting a kind of jazzier style of filmmaking, but so whilst it did inhibit my enjoyment of it somewhat, I did appreciate it as well. Like I liked the moments of quiet in between the, in the middle of this hunt, and I liked the sort of obsession it had with that house at the beginning. It seemed quite obsessed with its floor plan. You kind of got to know that house quite well. So, it's like a good 20 minutes of the film you spend. It's literally just setting up the fact that these guys are chasing her. You don't quite know why at this point. You get treated to the backstory later on. I appreciated that for it as well. I thought that was good. I thought that was unexpected, actually. Hits the ground running, doesn't it? It's literally the first shot, someone runs past the camera. What's going on here?
There's also some quite interesting stuff about the nature of the kind of experience of someone, who would be rendered an alien. You've kind of got this dual narrative. You've not just got the kind of samurai sort of narrative and thematic architecture alongside the visuals,
the revenge stuff,
being put in a landscape which it's never been seen in before. There's that, but there's also the thematic stuff about the nature of being this kind of alien thing. And I thought it was interesting that Maclean chose to situate their situation as they've kind of. I got the impression they were leaving that circus troupe behind.
Yes.
Or they'd had a long-standing kind of relationship with all of these individuals who were very much themselves, sort of fringe people.
Yes, yeah.
Even if they were people that were born in this country by their choice of profession, they are outsiders.
Yeah.
And it's, there's a lot to be said about the idea that outsiders tend to be more accepting of people of different people.
Yeah, yeah.
Than the kind of people in the stately homes that they entertain.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought it was quite interesting that, it was that the film kind of intercuts with that, like you say, that kind of that sort of Japanese puppeteer show.
Yeah.
And everyone's kind of like watching it. They're almost kind of shocked by how different it is to things that they're more familiar with, like the violence, for example.
Yeah, oh
and
yeah.
he sort
yeah.
of remarks like they always cheer when the bad guy wins. He's kind of the Tornado's father at the time. He's kind of remarks that, and that kind of just a little flickering of that kind of cultural difference, and the way I think it kind of spoke more broadly to how, as an audience member, we might those expectations of genre.
Okay, yeah.
Like we expect in the West a certain thing, but we're only seeing it through our lens.
Yes, okay.
No,
yeah, and so the introduction of the idea that the bad guy wins is kind of sort of an odd mix to this audience who are kind of bewildered, but like they seem to enjoy it, don't they?
Yeah,
it's a healthy enough distraction for something to get stolen.
Yeah.
So actually, is the reason that the strangeness of the performance to these sort of this group of English nobility is captivating enough that it kickstarts the whole plot. Yeah, I didn't actually think about that too much when I was watching it, but you're right. It's a simple, and it doesn't delve too deep into it, but it does have something to say about what it may have been like to. Because at the time, right, traveling the world just wasn't really feasible.
I mean,
right? You have to
I
go
don't
on a
know
boat.
how long would that have taken to travel from Japan to Great Britain?
Months and months and months. Like, yeah, because it would have.
I'd be interested to know how many, if that ever really happened.
I don't know. I should have done some research really, and seeing if it was based on any truth. I'm sure there was. Like, I'm sure there's emigration, and it was you had boats by that point, and so it would have been possible, but it would have been so rare that there'll be a tiny little cultural pocket in a sea of Englishness, I imagine, and that's what's happening here. There's already, I think, the fact that Tornado's desire to go to the village, right, and kind of into sort of maybe blend in more with the English side of things was met with disappointment and anger on her father's behalf.
Absolutely. It's interesting again that I guess the challenges, I think we spoke about this in the context of when we did Return to Seoul, that kind of idea of like having to juggle your origin and also assimilate into your new home.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it's particularly more challenging when you've got a dad who's obviously very, by all accounts, seems like a really nice bloke, but he's someone that is obviously, he's her last connection to their home.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
To who they are.
Yeah.
And I think, there's something more kind of powerful in the puppet display when you think about it like that, and their commitment to the kind of lifestyle that he wants to lead, and the kind of training with the sword and all that kind of stuff. This challenge of kind of raising someone to have the kind of values of where they're from, or to keep those values alive, but also to assimilate properly into society. It must be
very different.
A challenge.
You see that in films like Bend It Like Beckham and East is East as well, where there's with every passing generation there is an inevitable, I don't want to say diluting, but a mixture
Yeah.
kind of cultures.
Yeah.
It gets lesser as you go up the generations. It's usually a father figure who is indicative of the sort of most saturated bit of their cultural bubble is usually a father figure, and it's in the case with this one, which I kind of only now I'm coming to really admire, because when I was watching the film, there was a lot of other things going through my mind, and it's something I didn't quite consider until right now. So that's great. I love it. It's good. Love it. Yeah. No, it was really well done, and I think it was a shame that when we were in the cinema, not a great deal of people with us.
Yeah, I went. I mean, to be fair, I went to a showing at 10:30 on a Saturday, but it's a Saturday.
I went at 7:30 on a Saturday,
Right.
and
So-
it was similarly. There was one couple in there, and they looked pretty annoyed that I turned up because I turned up during the trailers.
Sat right next to them
I didn't
with your sushi.
They had a really good spot, right in the middle.
Yeah,
and I was
yeah,
like,
you've
I'm going to
gotta
go
be-
sit near because I want this good spot as
of
well.
course you do,
I
yeah.
think he was maybe gearing up for a hand job and he'd never got. I don't know. If you were at the 7:30 showing of Tornado,
Why would you pick Tornado?
I don't know. Actually, maybe
Maybe, yeah. I mean, maybe that's what he was banking on.
no
A sort
no
of
one's
more
going to
kind
go
of
watch
like
this.
slow-paced sort of mediation on Western views of Eastern culture, and while simultaneously blending in these kind of bleak but beautiful vistas. I'm getting a hand job.
Yeah,
No one else is
yeah.
coming in here apart from me.
Yeah,
And then you turn
I
up.
know. I turn up in the trailers, and he's like, "Fuck."
In the trailers as well.
It was- yeah,
like if
you
you
thought-
turned up before the adverts, maybe you wouldn't have got so hopeful.
Yeah. No,
But you turning up and sitting next to him.
too late to move, mate. You have to
Yeah,
stay there.
yeah,
I know.
yeah.
If you go up to the back, I know exactly what you're up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we went at 10:30 and it was just me and Georgia in the screen.
Oh man, that's
Cinema,
crazy. Yeah.
And sometimes it was quite nice. It's quite an experience.
yeah.
Doesn't happen often, but
No.
it actually, during and then more so on reflection, made me quite sad.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people are kind of like lamenting what is a pretty sort of, I don't want to say artistically stagnant, because that's a very twatty thing to say, but definitely a time where it is becoming increasingly apparent that, we are, if you're not making something that has already been, or in the sense that you're not making a sequel or a
Yeah.
remake.
Or you're just a director with a body of work already behind you, a sizable one like Nolan.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You can
like-
get away with it, but yeah, this
Like
guy-
it's very difficult to kind of break into the industry with with something that's, I mean, original is something perhaps a bit hesitant to use because it is kind of leaning quite heavily into genre, but it handles it in such an interesting way that I think it is kind of like quite original, and
yeah.
I think it's a real shame that it just doesn't seem to have captured people. I mean, putting it on at 10:30 on a Saturday night is probably not the best time to do that, and that was the only showing.
Yeah, I had very few showings, so
So-
the faith in it to start with probably wasn't great. Yeah,
because of that knowledge that this is a film that requires a bit more patience.
Yep.
And you're going to have expectations subverted.
Yeah.
Particularly, I just think going back to it, like I think that there was something so rewarding about not getting a final showdown.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You said this to me, and I didn't really think about. I loved the scene in question that you're talking about. I didn't really think
Tim
about it
Roth,
at the
who's
time.
the main gangster, isn't he? So
Sat next to each other, with these two trees, and they're kind
Yeah.
of both slumped against these trees, and they just have a discussion.
almost
don't
like not sort of like a heart to heart, but
there's an understanding,
Yeah,
isn't there,
yeah.
between the two? And he knows he's fucked, right? He knows he's going
Yeah.
to die, so he kind of calms down, and
Yeah.
he kind of just says a few kind of like,
almost reflecting on his life of criminality and
yeah,
and obviously it ultimately culminates in killing his son.
yes,
Points.
yeah.
Or having a relationship where his son feels that kind of same murderous rage towards him.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Tim Roth was superb.
Yeah, he was good.
But yeah, no, I think it's sad that these kinds of movies aren't getting a great deal of. And to be honest, a lot of the critical reception based on the kind of pacing and stuff has been quite lukewarm.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
maybe that hasn't helped. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think that given the way things are in Hollywood at the moment, or certainly a mainstream sense of going to the cinema, and it's not always necessarily a bad thing, but there's still plenty of good films being made, but it's getting harder and harder to kind of have an experience like that. And I think it's okay to come out and be not sure.
Yeah.
But at least, and that doesn't matter, at least you're watching something slightly different, like
Oh yeah.
taking a gamble is becoming less and less of an option in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Not just with watching films, but generally speaking, in terms of culture.
Oh, I know. That's
You're
true. Actually,
being funneled into
franchises
and remakes and everything safe. And it's like, oh no, I don't want to. I'm not sure about that. It's like we need to bring back an attitude of no, I will try.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to do it all the time. Like if you had a shit day at work, I'm not expecting you to want to go and watch fucking Tornado. Fair enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You might want to watch Diagnosis Murder. That's fine. And Angela Lansbury,
I think it's
again not in Diagnosis Murder. But
I think it's funny because box office takings are becoming increasingly easy to predict. So you quite often get a prediction of an opening weekend, which is very accurate. And I think this might be why. Is because obviously they survey people and stuff, but the funnel thing I think is the reason, because you can see the trajectory of success early days. And it's a shame, because if that wasn't the case, more cinemas would maybe have shown this. And it would have been
I mean, you can't really blame cinemas for not wanting to take a punt on it, as they already make a pretty meager amount return on the ticket anyway.
Yeah, it's like 40%, I think.
Well, I think it's even less.
Yeah,
in some cases.
In the international market, I think it's less. Yeah.
So it's a situation where cinemas have sort of got their hands tied and they have to just put out, like Madagascar 17 and, another Marvel movie or whatever. Or, they know what, I guess they know what's going to sell.
Yeah. It's a shame.
And that, in that means that if you're someone like John Maclean who hasn't made a film for 10 years.
Oh man, and to come out with something like this as well as your follow-up. I hope it has a life elsewhere, maybe on physical media, which has us in a niche still.
Yeah,
I think it would.
This smacks to me of a film that will have a critical reevaluation in 15, 20 years' time.
When it does, we'll do a little episode about critical reevaluation.
Yeah, and we'll say, I told you.
Yeah.
I really thought it was a very good movie.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the way it tastefully handled genre expectation, chiefly through silence.
Okay, yeah.
Which is such a fucking... It's so uncommon.
Yeah.
To be just, have a movie that's confident in the space between sequences of action or just dialogue,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that element of it was initially quite baffling to me. I was expecting something else, but in the way it played with my expectations, I've thought about it a great deal since.
Yeah,
and it has lasted on me, and discussing it with you has kind of made me think a bit more warmly to it in retrospect, which is a lovely thing to happen when you go to the cinema.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I still think the editing and the pacing could have maybe changed a bit, but equally it was
90 minutes. I think I would totally agree with you. Perhaps maybe totally agree with you.
If
maybe
it was 2 hours.
Maybe totally, yeah.
Yeah.
It was like 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
I'm definitely
trimming
leaning into that, and
Yeah.
also, maybe I wouldn't, but I would definitely be more sympathetic to that criticism.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah,
but the fact it's 90 minutes.
What can you do? Yeah.
Lean.
It's got Neil's dad from The In-Betweeners in it as well at the beginning, if you're a fan of that.
Oh, yeah.
He's in the thick of it as well. I can't remember his name. He's a really good actor, actually.
Yeah.
Good British actor. Oh, nice.
Questing the cinematic void.
There we have it then. Tornado.
I don't know if it's still playing near you, but if it is, go see it.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like it, that's fine. Like
Give it some
you
love.
shouldn't be worried about not liking things. I don't think.
No. Yeah, I agreed. And it doesn't take up a
If it's
great...
small movie like this. Like,
yeah, enjoy the scenery. If nothing else, it has that.
Yeah,
It has that kind of golden hue, which is quite
Oh, it's
comforting.
beautiful.
I think Really
Beautifully
nice.
shot movie.
Yeah,
Beautiful. Yeah.
The ending shot is really striking. No post credit scene, bit annoying, of course. Yeah. Next week.
Go on, Ben.
28 years later, a film I have been looking forward to since December when the trailer came out, and arguably
Very good
before
trailer.
that. Yeah, good trailer. Good couple of good. Both trailers have
It's
been
not
really
often
good.
you can say that about films these days. That the trailer, as very commonly known, that a lot of trailers just shit the plot at you.
Yeah,
You know.
including spoilers. And this one didn't. It was just intriguing and ferocious. And I'm a huge Danny Boyle fan, as I'm sure you all know. It verges on the point of fanboy levels, which
Okay.
is slightly dangerous, I think, because my opinion, I feel, is very sort of centered into the extreme.
Okay.
And
I'm looking forward to watching this with you. 'Cause I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah.
I've seen a Danny Boyle film with you.
No, you're not.
And I'm
haven't,
interested to sort of pick your brains the moment we walk outside of the cinema.
no. Yeah.
I'm quite looking forward to doing that.
Oh man, yeah. I've had two.
I really hope you don't. I really hope you like it.
I think I will. I think regardless of the quality of the product, I think there's something about his films which I just find really gleeful and really energetic, and I get a real kick out of. Even the ones that nobody really remembers or likes, like
Yeah.
Trance and A Life Less Ordinary. Like I still find them really good in their own way. I try my best to recognise their flaws. And The Beach as well, actually. I'm a big defender of that film.
Yes. Yeah.
I've had two dreams about 28 years later. One of them was that it wasn't very good.
Right.
And it was like a kind of gutting experience. And another one where the cinema screen stopped working and they brought out like a telly. And everyone else in the cinema was cool with it. And I was like really outraged. And I shouted at the staff and
Wow.
they felt bad about it. And then I woke up. So the show just goes to show just how
much has been on your mind?
it really. I keep checking the fucking Wikipedia page. It's bad. It's like verging on obsession. Maybe it has kind of I've gone over the precipice of obsession, maybe. And it's out tomorrow. We're going to see it tomorrow, and I'm really jazzed.
Tickets are booked. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'll try my best to be level-headed and kind of consider it as it's from an objective point of view. Really looking forward to talk about that. The first film as well, and that franchise.
Yeah. I was actually hoping to rewatch them both, of course, 28 days and then weeks, but haven't had a chance. So I think what I'm going to do is watch this and then rewatch the other two afterwards.
Okay. Yeah. No, mate. Fair play. First one's on iPlayer at the moment. Actually.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's deliberate, isn't it?
Oh, yeah,
They always
totally.
do that, don't they?
Yeah,
Did that with
yeah.
Gladiator, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll check it. I'm gonna go for it because I do love 28 days later.
I don't want to take up loads of your time with.
No.
No.
It's good. It's funny. I read the script of 28 Days Later recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
'Cause
okay.
I'd never realised I'd never written written
Yeah.
word for word.
Yeah.
No, I've never read an Alex Garland script, and I was just intrigued by it. And
There you go. Yeah.
because that's quite a big part of the marketing material, which I think is interesting, given that by and large, like even the industry doesn't usually care about writers. So it's interesting to me that they're banging on about that.
Yeah, he's in the they're doing like a press tour and he's with them, which is odd. Again, yeah, for a writer to be there.
Yeah, I guess it's because he's
got quite a loyal set of followers, I think.
Yeah, and obviously he's quite well established as a director now, and
Yeah, he's doing the Elden Ring movie. Isn't he?
yeah. Still baffled by that.
Yeah, me too.
We'll see how that goes.
Nice.
I love the game, but I just don't know how that's going to be a movie.
Same, actually. I love Garland. I'm kind of not as much as Boyle. I think I'm more open to criticism on his films, but I still by and large love him, and that's an odd choice. I mean, just adapting that is an odd choice in general. I think so soon after its release, but anyway, we'll see.
Maybe the success of Minecraft.
Oh fucking hell, maybe that's that's an
depressing.
odd shout.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Right. Anyway, in the meantime, thank you for getting to the end of another episode.
thank you.
Please check out Tornado if you can.
Yes, do.
take it easy and look after yourself. We'll be with you to hopefully not have Ben
Crying.
dejected,
Oh, I can't believe it. Yeah.
slumped on the desk, and to discussing 28 years later.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Bye.
See you later.